Getting around in the city can be a problem for a lot of people. Cars gridlocked from street to street, with nothing but the ambient screams and honks filling the air. That was always one of the biggest drawbacks for me, living in the city. I had recently moved inward from the outskirts of the city for a job opportunity. It actually surprised me how difficult adjusting to life in the inner city would actually be. Now, I've been downtown numerous times, but only to meet some friends for drinks. During my time living in the suburbs, I would often mock my friends for not even having driver's licenses. I found it amusing that none of them could hop into a car and legally drive away. However, I soon realized that it wasn't as silly as I thought it was. The job opportunity I had received was for a company I had already been working at. A new position had opened up at one of the central branches in the inner city, and they offered it to me. The pay was fantastic. The hours were reasonable, and since I had seniority at my current job, apart from a few others who turned it down, I was asked if I'd like it. The only con, it would seem, was that I would have to move closer to the location itself. Sure, I could have commuted, but it would have been an hour and a half there and back every single day, something which I wasn't willing to do. So, my company actually helped relocate me for the new position, and I was sold. I found a small one-bedroom apartment not too far away from my job. It was about 30 minutes away on foot, which wasn't as bad as an hour and a half drive. After moving and getting adjusted to my new surroundings, I quickly realized how pointless a driver's license would be in this area. Every morning when I walked outside, I would be greeted to an almost endless sea of metal. Cars, buses, taxis, semi-trucks, all locked in a constant battle to get to their destination. One of the first few weeks of moving there, I went to meet up with a few friends of mine. They all wanted to meet up at a new bar on the other side of town. After arriving later than everyone else, covered in sweat, I quickly became the butt of everyone's jokes. They asked me why I didn't just ride the train here, to which I responded that I didn't know how. I suppose that was the wrong answer to give my friends, as they all mocked me for not knowing how to use the public transit system. Which I suppose is well deserved, since I joked about their lack of driver's licenses. After a few drinks, we all decided to call it a night. One of my friends drunkenly tried to help me figure out the subway system, but through all his slurred speech, I could only vaguely make out the words MetroCard. He stumbled his way down the steps into the underbelly of the city. The mechanical sounds of trains reverberated off the tiled walls. Garbled voices over loudspeakers spouted directions, but they might as well have been speaking another language to me. During this time, I had lost track of my inebriated guide. I looked around in a confused frenzy before someone grabbed my shoulder. I quickly spun around on my heels and was almost knocked off them by the smell of whiskey coating my friend's breath. He laughed before flicking a small yellow card in my face. I grabbed it, and he told me that I needed it to ride the train. I asked him how much it was, but he just belched and demanded that I follow him. We both swiped our cards and made it to the platform. The clacking of the train became louder and louder before a long metal tube appeared and screeched to a halt in front of us. The doors opened and we both made our way inside. After sitting down, my friend drifted off to sleep without telling me what to do next. We arrived at our next stop and I shook him awake. The voice over the loudspeaker announced our destination, to which my friend hollered back, "Not yet," before going right back to sleep. The following stop arrived and I nudged him again. He stood up with the vitality of a 90-year-old, coughing and retching all the while. We walked off the train and out of the terminal area. To my relief, we were only about a half a block away from my apartment. Amazed that we made it, I thanked him and we parted ways. Even though the whole experience was just me following my friend all night, I was surprised by how easy and fast it was. One minute I was on the other side of town, and the next I was right back home. I called my friend the next morning and thanked him for taking me home, although he didn't seem to remember it. He was pretty drunk after all. Regardless, I thanked him for the card and for the help. He mentioned that I needed to refill my card at one of the kiosks in the subway if I wanted to ride more before hanging up on me. The next day, I went back down to the subway, early in the morning, and located my work on the map. It was only 3 stops away from where I was located. This gave me great relief. All I had to do was locate the specific train to take me there. After putting money on my card and making it to the terminal, I found the train that I needed. It was then that I realized just how many people were down here waiting with me. The terminal area was packed, shoulder to shoulder, of people waiting to enter the train. As we walked on, I accidentally bumped into a large man standing in front of me. He yelled at me to watch it, before going back to mindlessly staring out the window. I counted the stops, and on the 3rd one I exited. When I ascended the stairs, I found my office building right across the street. That night, after getting off of work late in the evening, I decided I would ride the train back to my place. I had to get used to this thing one way or the other. I descended the nearby stairs and swiped my card at the entrance. After crossing that threshold, I noticed something odd. There was absolutely no one else down here but me. Even on that drunken adventure I had taken with my friend, there was at least a few people around. But not this time. I made my way over to the train and waited. Not long after, I heard that familiar sound of clacking metal approaching. The train screeched to a stop and I boarded. Stepping onto the train, I felt a wave of something wash over me. It wasn't fear or concern, it was more like uncertainty. Like my mind wasn't sure if this was the correct train to be on. I figured that if this was the wrong one, I'd just get off at the next stop and walk the rest of the way. However, the train didn't stop. I was sitting in my seat for a full hour before I realized something was terribly wrong. I got up and made my way to the conductor's car to ask him when we'll be arriving. However, when I tried to cross from one car to the other, the door itself was locked. As I struggled against it, the lights in the car began to flicker. Suddenly, the lights went completely out and I was standing alone in this train car, in pitch blackness. When the lights came back on a few moments later, what I saw unnerved me. The entire car behind me was filled with people, though they didn't appear to be actual people. They all looked like shadows. As if all of the people behind me were wearing black morph suits and standing shoulder to shoulder with one another. They were all facing my direction at the front of the car. I wasn't sure if it was the lights or my tiredness which was playing tricks on my mind. Though what happened next still terrifies me. The lights once again went out in the car. During this outage, I felt numerous hands begin grabbing at me. I screamed and attempted to shove them back, but they just continued to grab at me and tried to pull me into the center of the train. I fought against them, kicking and thrashing as hard as I could. I finally broke away from their grasp, and when I did, the lights came back on. The train slowly creaked to a stop shortly after, and the doors opened. I ran out of the car and fell onto the platform, gasping for breath. The doors on the train closed behind me, and it disappeared down the dark tunnel. What was odd was that when I exited out of the subway onto the street, I found that I was back in the same exact place I had started from. I ended up making the 30-minute walk back to my apartment anyway. I don't know what those things were riding in the train with me that night, but I do know that when they were grabbing at me, I felt a very evil energy coming off of them. Perhaps they were trying to make me into one of them. I don't know. I told my friends about it the following day, but they just thought I made the whole thing up. saying I probably just fell asleep on the train and had a bad dream. But it wasn't a dream. I know what I saw, and I know what I felt that night. If any of you are patrons of the underground transit system, be careful when riding the subway during the night. You never know who or what could be riding with you.